welcome to Written in Uncertainty, an Elder Scrolls podcast sat firmly in the grey maybe of the series universe. My name is Aramithius, and today I'm doing something a little different from normal. Normally this is an audio-only podcast where I ramble on for about anywhere between half an hour to nearly an hour on a particular question or in-depth area of the lore that I think could do with some explanation and some clarification and looking at where all the sources for it come from. What I'm doing now is a video hot take on my thoughts for the Elder Scrolls Somerset, or the Elder Scrolls Online Somerset, sorry. It's been a few days, well, it's been almost a week, and I've just had time for my thoughts to coalesce a bit, and I have been badgered into giving some rough takeaways from my perspective on the lore that was talked about in the podcast. Thank you very much, Agelus and Lotus of Doom, for getting me to finally do this sort of thing. I've been meaning to do some YouTube stuff for a while, but I haven't got around to it until now. What I think I'll do with this going forward is do a reading of a particular text and talk through the implications and bits and pieces that are all in that particular text at any one time. I should hopefully need less preparation for that than I do for the podcast. But right, back down to the announcement. There were 3 and a bit elements that I want to talk over in this. There was the introduction of the Necromancer class and some of the implications of that for the lore. There was the reveal that dragons are now coming to ESO, so given that quite a few people are possibly thinking how on earth can that happen, I wanted to talk through the reasons as to why and what the possible implementations for that are. And I also wanted to have a final look at some of the stuff that I think we can see about Elsweyr and the Khajiit and how that's going to possibly unfold in the storyline given what was talked about in the announcement and the post-show. So first of all, the Necromancers. The first one the first thing that I wanted to talk about is the Necromancer class and how the instant effects for that class are intended to be a bit less secure than bringing servants into the world and making them permanent. They were very, very keen to stress during the announcement that it was something that took a lot of work to put a proper permanent bound servant together, and this is something we see in quite a few of the books. On corpse preparation in particular, it tells you go out, bind all your corpses together, use leather, use rope, and make sure that they're secure and aren't going to start falling apart as they move. So the idea of casting instant effect things, which is literally just grab a dead body from somewhere, hurl it at someone to do something, and then it starts to fall to bits, is a really neat idea. And if you're into the label of lore friendly and that sort of thing, I think it definitely works. And I've heard some people saying that the idea of the Necromancer class breaks lore, and I'm not really sure why. I admit I haven't looked into this too much, but it's a class and a type of thing that has existed within the Elder Scrolls pretty much since it started, so I don't really know why people would think that this particular implementation in the Elder Scrolls Online is likely to break it. The thing that I was a little curious about was the kind of bone form thing that the Necromancers transform into as their ultimate ability, which does feel a little strange. It's not something that necromancy as such really focuses on. It's not really about self-transformation. The process of becoming a leash does involve that sort of thing. It's about, in essence, soul trapping yourself and possessing your corpse to make sure that you don't die, that you can modify your body and do this, that and the other to make sure that it lasts, but you're not biological anymore. It's a little different from the conventional leash that requires a phylactery, but I think that's part of the process. It's an intermediary stage to transfer your soul from your body to something else and back into your body again, if I remember correctly. But this particular ability doesn't really feel like that. So I don't really know why they're emphasizing the necromancer itself as a thing to be changed. I suppose it's possibly due to the limits of the game, in that they can't always guarantee a certain number of corpses, and necromancy isn't about conjuring stuff from thin air, so you can't just suddenly bring an army along with you to take on whatever boss, because you can't guarantee there are corpses around. But that's a system limit, not something that I think really fits in with the lore. But apart from that, it feels to me like it's a very, very nice development, um, but possibly not quite at the best time, if I'm honest, because the idea of necromancy as a thing and as a fully realized system doesn't really happen in the Elder Scrolls until after Manimarca's Ascension, as far as I can remember, which is quite a way off to the Warp in the West. That kind of process of producing black soul gems and engaging in proper human soul trapping and some of those dark arts, it's not something that's really there at the time of the Elder Scrolls. So again, that's another possible reason why, but I'm not particularly fussed about that. That's something that means that the necromancy we see in the Elder Scrolls Online will be different to the stuff that we might come to expect at the current timeline in the numbered games, but I don't think that it doesn't make sense for this sort of thing to happen. Necromancers are such a concrete part of the setting at all times in its history, particularly after Manimarco left Artaeum, that it doesn't really strike me as a problem in this particular time frame. The big reveal of dragons is the next point I wanted to go over, and this is one of the ones that I've certainly seen cause a lot of upset, because dragons are supposed to be gone, according to a lot of people, that dragons are disappeared, that they were beaten during the Dragon War and they aren't there anymore. That's not entirely the case. You look at the book Atlas of Dragons, and it talks about how hunting down dragons was an ongoing thing for the Blades, that after the various efforts to throw off dragon rule in Skyrim and possibly beyond that, we don't really have a lot of sources outside of Skyrim that would indicate that, but dragons were definitely still a thing, and so they needed to be hunted down and taken out by the Blades, or the Dragon Guards that became the Blades. And so there are still a handful hanging on around the time of ESO, that are being hunted down, and that they're on their way to extinction, but they're not quite there yet. One of the things that I am quite curious about in regards to that is that the Dragon Guard is very definitely a thing at this point. We have the book The Annals of the Dragon Guard in Skyrim, which is literally dated 20 years after the start of Elder Scrolls Online. So the Dragon Guard are definitely around, and if there's a big obvious blow up of lots of dragons appearing in Elsweyr, they're probably going to want to do something about it. So I will be very disappointed if there's no Dragon Guard or Blades or something like that getting involved in the main plot of the Elder Scrolls Online Elsweyr, because it feels very weird that an organisation that's devoted to the extermination of dragons, in some ways anyway, is not going to pay any attention to the biggest concentration of dragons on Tamriel at this point. There's also a note that I should probably talk about, that they are not just going to stick to the 3 dragons that we see in the trailer. During the post-show, Rich did say that they're the 3 dragons that we see, and they're going to find some friends, I think was the wording. So we're going to see more dragons than those 3, but exactly how many we're going to see, I don't know, because we don't have a Dragonborn, we can't kill dragons permanently. Their souls will still be lingering around and allowing them to be brought back and so on. You see Alduin doing this in The Elder Scrolls V a lot, and bringing them back that way. We can possibly say that these 3 dragons are going to start doing that and bringing back more, but it's also possible that when we just kill them in the field, so long as there's one left, they can fly around and resurrect something and bring everyone back. So there's the kind of mechanism for making the dragons recurrent world bosses that they need in order for it to work in an MMO. Where I think there might be an issue is that if they don't identify the dragons, because they are definitely a rare commodity, we should probably be used to seeing the same dragons over and over and over as they are killed and then brought back, killed and brought back, killed and brought back, either by the dragons themselves, or they did say something about player actions influencing it, so maybe player actions within the halls of the Colossus trip something off that makes the dragons respawn, that there's some artifact in there that sustains them or something. That's my thinking on how that's going to work. The next point is the Dragon Imp illusion pet. They do acknowledge that there are no baby dragons in the Elder Scrolls. The way that dragons are possibly brought about is that they're shards of Akatosh is one of the fan workarounds that you'll hear talked about. That as Akatosh is a dragon, and dragons are related to Akatosh in more ways than one, that they are a part of Akatosh. And I think the wording with I can't remember whether it was an interview or whether it was on a forum or something, but it was either Michael Kirkbride or Kurt Kuhlman that said that dragons are time machines powered by ideologies. So there's that quite alien understanding of what dragons are, and that has a huge impact on their biology, and there aren't any baby dragons, although there are female dragons. I'd be quite curious to see if they bring back any Jills with this particular expansion. The Jills are something that mostly you'll see in Michael Kirkbride's unlicensed stuff and forum posts, stuff that doesn't actually appear in the games. But they are minute menders. They're the things that keep the timeline stable, and I think possibly, although it's not been confirmed anywhere, that they're also the things that mend dragon breaks. They're the kind of things that make dragon breaks end, but that's purely my headcanon, I will admit that. But there have been, for those of you that are then saying, oh well, this is unlicensed stuff, hasn't been confirmed by Bethesda, this is Michael Kirkbride's headcanon, the word Jill has appeared in the French translation of a text. It was an alphabet text, so obviously they need to change up some of the words for the different languages, and I think J came up and brought up Jills, so there is some acknowledgement of them in the setting and in the games, even if the English-speaking world haven't seen that yet. So I'd be quite interested to see whether they bring around any Jills in this particular portrayal of dragons. So that's something I'm looking forward to, at least. And on to the final point now. Oh, sorry, I've forgotten about the pets. The Dragon Imp illusion stuff, they have said that there's no baby dragons, fine. There is, however, a species called dragonlings. They are small, they are lizards, they are fire-breathing. I can't remember whether they have wings or not, but they're definitely there. So I was really surprised that when they were announcing the pet for this, they didn't use dragonlings. Although it's possible that they're not particularly fussed about using dragonlings because they haven't appeared since Daggerfall. They haven't been in the game since The Elder Scrolls 2, I don't think. And so they're also only native to High Rock. So if they're trying to tie the appearance of the pet to Elsweyr, it's a bit of a stretch to say that they would have been naturally occurring when there's the whacking great desert of Hammerfell in the way to stop the ecosystems from being relatively homogeneous. And now we can get on to the talk about Elsweyr, now that I've actually finished off all the stuff about dragons. Absolutely, definitely, promise. We said that the announcement said that there would be more talk about the Khajiit's relationship with the moons, which, as they're starting to talk about a necromantic army invading from Cyrodiil, immediately made me think, oh, is this something to do with the Necromancer's moon? Some sort of shadowing of Manimarco's ascension? Are we going to see Manimarco in the storyline somewhere trying to work out something about the Khajiit's relationship with the moons? Because we see him in the Elder Scrolls 2 become a god and become the Necromancer's moon at the end of one of the parts of that story. So I would very much expect that that's something to do with why we need to look at how the moons work. Although that's purely a hunch, I must admit. One of the snippets that no one talked about, and I was shocked, was the kind of the throwaway line that the Khajiit govern themselves, that they're not directly overseen by someone within the rest of the Aldmeri Dominion, and that there's not a Grand Dominion ruling council that delegates or that then gives the Khajiit orders and stuff. So I'd be curious to see what kind of self-government that is. If it's in the pattern of the other Elder Scrolls games, we should be expected to see the Main, which is the religious leader of the Khajiit, and the first edition pocket guide to the Empire talks about it as being a thinly veiled theocracy during the reign of Tiber Septim. So I would expect the Main to be very involved in Elsweyr politics, and if not the actual titular ruler of the province. So I'd be very interested to see how that all plays out. I don't know exactly what it would look like, but particularly given that they're focusing on Rimmen, which is a province where there's many more humans than there is in the rest of Elsweyr. So unless they open up absolutely all of the province, oh no, they've talked about the gash through the centre of the province and all the other bits when they're talking about the biomes. So yeah, they've got the whole thing. Okay, never mind that. There was the saying that we would see the rest of the Khajiit first stocks, or not the rest of, because trying to do all 16 as character models I imagine would be a little expensive. But more first stocks certainly, and Alfiq. We didn't have any indication that the Alfiq could talk until now, but their affiliation with magic and their use of it is something that we've heard about before, although not yet seen in the games. I'm very, very interested to see how they use the Alfiq, because they are some of the best kinds of Khajiit if you're looking to spy on people, commit political intrigue, espionage, all that good stuff. So their role within society is kind of determined by their form as well, in that sense. So quite what they're going to do with the Alfiq, I don't know. I'm interested. Back to some of the things that we did definitely see in the trailer, though. The Hall of the Colossus in Rimmen. That was where the Numidium was assembled by Tiber Septim. But the way that the trailer put it across was that this is some long shut up place that has been suddenly reopened. I'm kind of curious as to how the storyline ends in that case, because I don't think the halls of the Colossus will be resealed. They are a Dwemer ruin, and they have always been, but I would totally expect the Hall of the Colossus to be left open at the end of the storyline, because otherwise I'm not sure exactly how they'd work out Tiber Septim getting in to reassemble the Numidium there. And so how that fits in, I don't know, but again, I think probably will be part of the climax of the story that the Halls of the Colossus will remain open if they're looking to keep this as a kind of a rolling thing throughout the year, and then keeping access to the Halls of the Colossus even after that point, and having a reason for that would be quite a big part of the storyline, I would imagine. So that's why I think that's another reason I think why the Halls of the Colossus needs to stay open, even if the tablet itself, which is the key, is broken or something happens to it. I have a feeling that it will probably have something to have some kind of fate to make sure that it doesn't get used by anyone else to bring back dragons or anything like that. We'll have to see how that goes. That's it for my thoughts on the major announcements. There was one little tidbit that bugged me a little, that they mentioned. The revamp of Cyrodiil with the Daedric artifacts. They talked about Sheogorath unleashing Daedric artifacts. I don't think that was necessary, so to speak. If you read the book Tamrielic Lore, or I think so it's called Tamrielic Artifacts, most of the artifacts listed in there have ways of disappearing or being lost when they find out that their current bearer isn't worthy anymore, or they feel the need for a change or something. That particular text feels like the artifacts almost have a will of their own in where they go and who they attach themselves to. So while the ways of changing up who has what artifact may need to be accelerated a little given the timescales of MMOs and how often people want the big new shiny thing, I don't think that it would have needed much in the way of adjustments in order to make it sound plausible on its own. I was a little disappointed that they invoked Sheogorath and him in order to unleash these things and create chaos. The artifacts can do that perfectly well by themselves in the texts that we have. So I'm just curious again to see how it goes. They're obviously being very cautious with that, and so we'll have to see what they do in terms of letting the other artifacts back into the game. We've seen Volendrung is going to be part of it, and so will we see other things like the Cuirass of the Saviour's Hide and Spellbreaker and all those other ones that are part of Tamrielic Lore, the book, which does have a place in ESO. So I'd expect those to be the first candidates for the next set of artifacts to go around, things like the Staff of Magnus. Although I'd imagine things like armor and protective gear probably doesn't really lend itself to the kind of one versus many kind of environment that they're looking to generate with these artifacts. The kind of everyone descend on an area at once, chaos ensues. It doesn't really feel like the kind of thing that a shield or a particular cuirass would do. So I'll just have to see, I guess. But there is precedent for it happening without Sheogorath, was my key takeaway there. And so I was just a little disappointed. That's about all that I could pull out from this particular announcement. I'm really interested to see how it goes. I loved the visuals that we saw on Elsweyr, given that we've had very little indication of what it looks like, and I'm also curious to see what kind of thing they're going to drum up for the humans and Rimmen, and how they are, what they do, and what their relationship with the rest of the province is. So yeah, I guess that's it for now. I've been rambling on for long enough, and going forward I will be releasing a bit more of a general "Hi, this is me" video at some point in the next few days if you're joining us from YouTube, and I'll also be releasing texts and going through them and pointing out the various bits of them, what they mean, and how I think they fit into the broader Elder Scrolls lore and what kind of insights they give on this channel. So stay posted for some of those, and hopefully my voice will be better next time. I realise it's going horribly, but thanks ever so much for taking the time to watch and to listen, and I will see you around. Until then, this podcast remains a letter written in uncertainty. You've been listening to Written in Uncertainty, a podcast written and presented by Aramithius. The music for this podcast has been kindly provided by Jan Glembotsky. Check them out on SoundCloud under Songs from the Lost Land, and I'll see you next time.